Hey everybody, you are listening to the History Boys. I, again, am Christopher Whedon, and if you remember last time I was talking about the sun and how I hated it. It's cloudy today. It's still too warm. But I just wanted to say that Jerry and I walked away from the exact same pub and eatery as last time, and I was like, see, this is what I was talking about with the sun. You're like, that is right there.
It was accurate.
It was like right that same time of day. We were leaving right the same amount of beers.
Yeah.
I was like, see? I just had to experience it. I wasn't making up jokes. I hit my head. We both hit our head on the sun.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
Zach wasn't there for that, but...
no. But you know who is here
for... You know who is here for this?
Hi, I'm Zach Meck, and I am your long-lost history boy.
The prodigal son.
Yeah.
That was the son that he hit his head on.
He defeated... Yeah, Tyler hit his head on a different son. Yeah. His own son. Which is why he's not here.
Yeah.
He's to watch that boy.
He has to watch the boy.
The missus is out of town. He's got to watch that boy. And we try to get the boy on the podcast.
Yeah. We're recording in person.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Which I don't know if you people at home know that we haven't done that in all summer, I don't think.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe more.
Well, it's great to be back.
Yes.
I'm Jerry Nash, your humble history boy, as always. Thank you so much for listening. Today we have a listener request, gang. Listener request.
Ding, 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 ding.
This one actually took me a little bit to put together. It was requested back in January, I think, of this year.
I think we have older requests than that.
We have older requests than that. This was one that, I was like, wait a minute. I actually don't know a lot about that. Mm-hmm. So I spent a lot of time getting this one together. So my list of sources, it'll be evident how crazy it was. Go and look at that if you want to see my sources. There's too many to really talk about here, but there's a lot of them.
You see that, gang? We actually listen and we read each and every one of your requests, but we play favoritism.
We do. I don't even remember who told us this one.
This one comes from Colby.
Oh!
Yeah.
Hi, Colby.
Yeah, and Colby wanted to know more about the Silesian Uprisings.
That's right.
Now,
is that spaghetti to the spaghetti incident?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's Calvin and Hobbes.
Yeah. No, we're not talking about the Silesian Wars. Mm-hmm. This happened in, Frederick the Great's time. So basically, this kind of stuff has been going on since then. Yes. Since the late 1700s, early 1800s. It's been going on since then. Right? Mm. This whole thing, everything we're talking about, it's always been a thing.
Yes.
Right? So at the end of the First World War, a new Polish nation was founded out of the lands that were held by Tsarist Russia, the German Empire, and the now extinct Austro-Hungarian Empire. Mm-hmm. And of course, I guess the German Empire is also extinct at this point as well.
Yeah, it's
Weimar now.
Yeah.
Right.
There's the map from... What is it? When did the war start? 1914?
Yeah.
1914 to 1918, I believe, is World War I.
Yep.
Drastically different in that area.
Totally different.
Just nothing is the same anymore.
Yeah. Eastern and Central Europe is completely changed. Forever changed.
Mm-hmm. And it stayed the same ever since then.
Yeah, right.
That's true. I was
Even
just
in my
there.
lifetime, I have memories of it changing.
Yeah, right. The stuff we see with Ukraine and things like this goes back, it goes back way, way far. But, we're going to deal with that stuff in this era, and there's so many things that are happening at this time. It's not the only thing Poland is dealing with, this subject matter we're about to talk about. It's not the only thing Germany's dealing with. It's not the only thing Russia's dealing with. They're all dealing with a bunch of different things here.
Yeah.
Okay? Just know that.
Well, it's we can't tell the entire story of World War I. And all the pieces of that just to...
And I can't tell all of the, the whole story of all the interwar years, right? This is just one piece, small piece of the fighting after World War I.
Okay.
So basically, when the armistice was signed, the fighting didn't stop, especially in the East and Central Europe. The Poles, though... They never forgot their nationality through that whole time. So, every generation, it seemed, they would rise up against, either Russia, Austro-Hungary, and Germany. They would rise up against these guys, and then they'd be put down, and then rise up, and then, it was sort of like a tradition, amongst Poles, because their nation didn't exist anymore, and they wanted it to exist.
Right.
And it was, divided up amongst those countries.
I don't know if you're going to get into this, but something I thought was always interesting was the idea of just the geography of Poland made it extremely easy to invade, and just made their life, like, the people there had to live really hard lives for a very long time, because just, like, huge basin pretty much.
Yeah, it's wide open.
Wide open,
Yeah.
Whereas, like, France is the opposite. It's, like, perfectly secure. It has, like, great land for growing crops and making delicious food and wine. And they're over there just being like, haha. Yeah. And Poland is just constantly getting beaten back.
Yeah.
It makes for hardy, strong people.
Well, and they're right in the middle of a Protestant country, whom they hate because they're Catholic.
Yeah.
And an Orthodox country, whom they hate because they're Catholic.
Yeah, that's
right.
And, of course, the two on the other side, Russia and Germany, they hate each other too.
Yeah.
Just
surrounded.
They're surrounded by people that hate them, and that they hate everyone else.
And they're like, and they're prime marching through land.
Yeah, exactly. This is my marching through land.
Really, what is that old phrase that, like, my stomping ground.
Ah, yes, you got there.
Yeah.
I mean, it certainly doesn't help how the Poles are so inviting, because, on both sides of the country, they like their cheese and they like beer, and Poland just makes the most delectable fried cheese and unfiltered beer.
Zach, may I ask you something? Have you been to Poland recently?
Yeah, I was in Warsaw.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I would love to go to Warsaw.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Warsaw's great.
Listeners at home, if you're in Poland, I'm gonna crash to your couch.
Dude, we have Polish listeners. They've
rad.
contacted us before.
I love it. That's
We
rad.
have Polish listeners. It's pretty dope. So the year is 1918. The armistice has been signed, ending the senseless carnage of World War I. Or was it senseless? You see, on the Eastern Front, and in the hearts and minds of a lot of people in Eastern and Central Europe, this war was actually necessary. In a lot of ways, it was necessary. We think of it differently in the West. The whole war on the Eastern Front was a lot different.
Well, it's kind of like
from the Western Front.
Exactly what I was saying. Where it's like, if you look at how much those, like, on the Western Front, not a lot of change. I mean, there's changes but France is there, Belgium, Germany, they're there.
Yeah.
Switzerland gets to hang out in the mountains because nobody wants to climb that shit. I always wondered if, like, similar. Sorry, I did not. The thing I was telling about with, like, France is kind of well guarded, where Poland is not. I wonder if part of the reason Switzerland is able to be neutral is because it's tucked there in the in the Alps.
Well, within the Treaty of Versailles, all the countries of the world basically recognized Switzerland's neutrality. They would never want to be a part of anything like this.
They never, I think there's a certain, like, they're like, hey, you never got involved?
Yeah.
You're good.
Yeah. That was definitely a point. Speaking of points, Wilson's 14 points that he made after the war, they, there are all these things that we need to fix and make sure this kind of thing never happens again. And I'm not going to read all the 14 points.
The first 7 of them are just the words you can't say on TV, right? That's George Carlin.
Well, his 13th point, basically all of these points were demands for after the war. Like, things that
These are the words I can say on TV.
Things that had to happen. So I'm not going to say all the points here, but the 13th point is, quote, an independent Polish state should be erected, which should include the territories inhabited by indisputably Polish populations, which should be assured a free and secure access to the sea, and whose political and economic independence and territorial integrity should be guaranteed by international covenant.
That's a mouthful.
I missed that in the press conference after the Seahawks versus Broncos game when Russell Wilson got booed from the Seahawks.
Yeah.
Did he bring up how there should be a Polish
I didn't
state?
realize that he was sympathetic to the Polish population.
Yeah, Polish state.
He's like, I demand there should be a... They're like, well, there is now.
Yeah, there is now.
He's like, oh. I mean, it's been a while, dude.
I'm kind of behind. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you get tackled enough times, and you get that.
Also,
brain.
in his defense,
Yeah.
he was reading all of history
Concussions.
in order, so he had already gotten to Poland existing at all. So that's
Yeah.
pretty fucking impressive.
They're just like, guys, you know? It's like, dude, is that where you're at?
I don't like to be
Exactly.
spoiled,
Yeah.
but I've been reading history,
Yeah,
I'm
no
at about-
spoilers, please.
I'm at 1918.
Yeah.
It's like, all of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, this is kind of it's sort of a naive thing to say, because there's a lot of problems with that.
So you don't say that, like, you basically go, in this area of land, we're going to say that it is a specific state of a specific race of people.
Well, there's Poles
Or
there, they speak
cultural,
they speak
a
Polish.
cultural group
Yeah.
of people must be in this spot.
Yeah, yeah. And there were parts of Czechoslovakia that was going to go to Poland. There were parts of Ukraine that was going to go to Poland. There were parts of Russia that were going to go to Poland. There were parts of Germany that were going to go to Poland. So no one's happy, right? And they're like, wait a minute.
And the Polish are probably like, well, that's a target on our back.
Well, they're like, hey, great.
like,
We got a nation, right?
Good thing we had the one world war.
Yeah. Good thing fighting totally stopped after
Nobody's
1918.
going to want to fight a world war after that fucking travesty.
Yeah.
Exactly.
They were fighting. They never stopped fighting. They were fighting on their eastern front continuously. That
Yeah.
never stopped.
Yeah.
The Bolsheviks did not want to come to the diplomacy table, and the Allies didn't want the Bolsheviks there either. So fighting never stopped over there because, to them, that area that was given to Poland was always Russia, right? It's not true. And then they were fighting for a different reason, right? Well, we're bringing the revolution of the people, to all nations, and da-da-da-da-da, right? It's just more carnage, is what it really was, right? We don't have a lot of time to go into that.
Certainly not.
But know that Germany is dealing with stuff on both sides. Poland is definitely dealing with something on all sides, basically. And there's this overarching point that we have to remember that Germany is expected to have war reparations. They have to pay all this stuff. They're like, this war is your fault. You have to pay all these war reparations. And in order to do that, they need the industrial centers and things like this to churn out natural resources and things to sell. In order to make the money to pay these reparations.
So, serious question. What happened with Poland is similar to what happened in World War II with Palestine and Israel? Is that a safe
That's
thing
not.
to...
No.
No?
That's a lot different.
There may be some similar. Would there be some similarities to it, do you think?
It's the same in that a country that didn't exist now exists.
Right, exactly.
And
that's what I meant.
people are not happy in certain areas because this country now exists.
Right. Okay.
Right? It's different because Poles live there and they are very nationalistic. For generations they've wanted their own country, right? I'm not
Right.
saying Israelis are any different. I'm just saying that
There's no infighting versus in Poland.
it's just different circumstances.
Yeah,
right.
It's for different reasons. It's a whole other ball of wax. You know what I mean?
Okay. But it's still a ball of wax.
It's a ball of wax.
Okay.
Though. Yeah. Most of these things are. Now, a big sticking point was this.
Speaking of wax.
Nice.
Was this small area in the south of Poland called Upper Silesia, or Silesia. It was actually, there was Upper, there was Lower Silesia, there was another place in the middle, and I might be actually sort of pronouncing a little bit.
South Central Silesia.
Silesia, I think is actually pronounced.
Straight out of Silesia.
Yeah,
I got that album.
That's a good one.
That is.
Yeah, this is where a lot of problems came from with these 14 points, right? Right? So, the reason why is because it was mixed ethnically, right? You had German Poles, and you had Polish, straight up
Double
Polish.
Poles.
And to complicate matters, you had Silesians that were neither German or Polish. And they still kind of want their own state. And they've wanted their own state for a very long time. They even have their own language, which some people, they're like, it's a dialect of Polish. It's sort of a mixture. Dialect of Polish and German. It's like, go down there and tell them that.
Yeah. You won't understand them because it's not fucking Polish.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. I don't know. I don't know how similar they are.
So Silesia was the pole position, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah,
Nice.
it was
Thank
the
you.
largest. It was the largest minority group in Poland.
Okay. Yeah.
Is the Silesians.
The majority.
The silent majority.
Now, generally speaking, a way to think of this in Silesia is that people that lived in the city considered themselves more German, and the people that lived in rural areas considered themselves more Polish. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a good way to think about it. So I just want to set that stage here. Now, the real reason why Silesia is such a sticking point here is because it's also a huge mining hub and industrial hub.
You don't say.
Yeah.
What a weird coincidence.
Yeah. So all their coal, like there's a lot of coal mines, there's a lot of all these iron, all this stuff comes out of this place, right?
Right.
And Germany is like, we need this area that is historically quote unquote ours.
Since 6 months ago when we all teamed up.
Since
I know it's
Frederick
more, yeah.
since Frederick the Great,
No,
basically, is what they're talking about.
I'm kidding, but yeah.
They're like, it's historically ours. During a process known as Germanification, in the mid 1800s, they were trying to convert basically the culture of this particular population to German. Right? It's like in Crusader Kings when you go change culture to this county,
Yes.
to my culture, and then you get a bunch of uprisings. That's exactly what's going on here.
Okay.
Now, the French position on this Silesian question is, of course, they wanted to hurt Germany as much as possible,
Fuck.
right?
Yeah,
and that was basically their attitude.
Based
Fuck
on my
them.
understanding
Yeah.
at the time, they were probably pretty upset.
Oh yeah, very upset. Now, Poland wanted this area to sustain their shaky economy, right? So they had basically an alliance with France, and historically, France has had an alliance with Poland. So having a French ally that's in between Russia and Germany was good for France, basically.
Right.
You know what I mean? And yeah, it's a new economy, it's a new country. They're going to need some of these industrial centers. Now, Britain was more sympathetic to Germany because they were like, look, we were going to make Poland, it's going to be a thing, but we want all of these reparations to come from Germany. How are they going to pay it back if we give them all of these sort of industrial centers,
Yeah.
And it's like, are you, one author said...
They want those reparations.
Yeah, one person, I think even Lloyd George, who was the Prime Minister of Britain at the time, he said, is France cutting off their nose to spite the face? They're not going to be able to repay this. Do they just want them ruined forever?
Right.
And they were basically like, oui.
Yeah.
And then they gave the Maurice Chevalier laugh.
Yeah, there
Yeah.
you go. But the thing about Britain is that they had their hands full elsewhere. Places like Ireland.
Yeah.
They had their hands full.
The war, we mentioned this in some of our other, the Irish, the Easter Rising, wars tend to bring out a lot of uprising. As this episode,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the Bolsheviks, all over the place. Armenia.
Poland, Ukraine, Armenia. Oh man, it's everywhere. And not just in one place.
Oh yeah.
Within one country, it's multiple places for different reasons in the same country.
Yeah.
See, I think this is why soccer, or internationally known as football, is so popular, because everyone wants to have their own home or root for their own home team.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's all them hooligans that do the fisticuffs and everything.
I think there's truth. I mean, soccer, brings everyone together and tears them apart.
And divides us.
Yeah, I mean, shit, it is the world's biggest religion, if you ask me.
Yeah.
Now, the United States didn't really give a shit.
Sounds about right.
About soccer.
Yes.
That's changing.
It's changing. No, they didn't really care until, Poland or these countries could come out with a stable democratic government. And then we'll talk.
Definitely not socialist, though.
Yeah, no, definitely not. But then we'll talk, right? And that's kind of the United States point. No interest unless you're like me and we can actually be stable and have a good back and forth sort of economy.
So they're opposite King Louis. They're I want you to walk like me, I want you to talk like me.
Yes.
You know what I'm
Exactly.
saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
talk like me.
Yeah.
Well, because the United States emerged from World War One as like the most powerful
Yeah.
country on Earth. You know what I mean?
They were,
And look where we're at now.
super isolationist before that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. But the thing is no one could agree on any of these points. No one could agree. And it divided the Allies. You know, Poland's basically like left in the corner, like, so I'm dealing with Russia, I'm dealing with Germany, I'm dealing with all this shit, and I don't have like the Allied infrastructure that all these other countries affected by the war also had.
Yeah.
I don't have that. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Yeah, they're kind of left out in the cold, so to speak, you know?
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't agree where to divide it, you know? Like, I picture it like, it is sort of like a pie, and people like,
Oh, yeah.
we'll cut it here. And it's like, but that gives them most of the pie.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, how about we cut it here? They're like, no, move it back. You know, like, that's kind of how they're talking about this.
But that's amore.
Yeah. It's a pizza pie. I was thinking of it as a pizza pie the whole time.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
I'm glad.
I was like, I know you said pie. I was like, my brain goes, all right, pie, apple, cherry. Nah, fuck that.
Yeah.
Pizza.
Yeah.
Sorry, we're not from the Midwest. We're not going to do the apple pie with a slice of cheddar cheese on top. Although that is delicious. But
I've never had it, but
It's
you know,
amazing.
I'm not above it. I'm not
it's
above
good
it.
stuff.
I just need somebody to present it to me.
Yeah.
So because no one could agree, during the conference at the Treaty of Versailles, they basically required a plebiscite to be held in Silesia. And a plebiscite's basically just a vote, right? And Silesia wasn't the only place they held one, right? But the point is that they were like, do you want to be in Germany or do you want to be in Poland? Sounds simple enough, doesn't it?
No.
It's not.
No.
It's not simple. The problem with this is they pushed the vote to remain in Germany or be in Poland off to 1921. That's a long time from now.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like
What, are they
really,
building
guys?
a light rail? You know what I'm saying?
Right?
Yeah, Seattle.
There's some Seattle humor for you. But it's just like, oh, so wait until it turns into a pressure cooker and then hold the vote? Yeah, that's good.
Wait. Yeah, just till the 1 second before it was too late.
Yeah, exactly. They just good intentions, you know, paving the road to hell, you know. Now both countries, Germany and Poland, they circulated vicious propaganda about, you know, staying in Germany versus Poland, right? Now, people at the time, even there, they were like, well, you know, there was a nationalistic sense. we're gonna be Poland and da-da-da-da-da, you know. And then the other guys are saying like, no, we are Germany, da-da-da-da, you know.
Yeah.
There's a lot of flexing of muscles in that realm. But it really had less to do with that and more to do with where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Yeah.
And
That
so
old
they're
interview
like,
question.
okay, new country of Poland that is kind of shaky, or Germany that historically, I mean, they lost a war, but historically they've been doing better. They've been doing really well. They just got a Weimar Republic, which is very progressive, by the way. A lot of people were like, well, I'd rather be with Germany. It sounds more stable to me, right? And at that time, it made sense to people.
Yeah.
You know? So keep that in mind. But with this propaganda going on, it further polarized the public.
I mean, it's like the propaganda essentially sounds to me like a shitty guidance counselor.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
like where do you see yourself in 10 years? Well,
Yeah,
reminds me of
this
the-
is what my parents wanted me to do.
It reminds me of
so
trying to
That's
a
what I'm
guidance
gonna
counselor
do.
trying to convince me to join the army.
Yeah.
Which have you dealt with that? I've dealt with that.
I've never dealt with that because they were like, you can't do that. You have a problem with authority.
I mean,
I think they
that
were
was
just
my
like-
whole life of
Yeah.
joining the military.
I was like, are you? Yeah. I know a lot of. I would just say a couple people who join the military have a problem with authority.
Yeah.
One or two.
Yeah. I have a deep-seated distrust.
Yeah, I do too.
But I don't know.
I think there's a certain. I've known people who want to join the military because they say they crave discipline, and I'm like, that
They
sounds
wanted structure.
fucking
Yeah, they wanted
awful.
structure in their life. Yeah.
I don't want structure.
Yeah.
I want chaos.
Yeah.
I want a little bit of chaos as a treat.
Yeah. And what further polarization, I mean, we see it here in this country. We have really polarized on one side, really polarized on another, and it leads to civil unrest. That's just what it does. Mm-hmm. People that can't stand to be in the same room with each other, they want to fight each other now.
So what you're saying, like now, where our country, the United States, is more divided than ever, but
yes,
that's just because of cell phones, right?
No, no, it's not.
Dana was watching this video
propaganda
that she had to watch for a class that basically was saying that, and she starts boiling it down and starts blaming cell phones.
No,
and it's because people don't talk to each other.
No,
and she turned it off. She was like, "This is so stupid."
Oh my god!
Now, I wholeheartely disagree with that. However, now is it because we want to fight each other, or is it because we want to fuck each other?
Ooh.
There's a
Well, see,
it's a thin line right there, and believe you me, I've watched many a Sarah Palin documentaries on the old internet,
starring Lisa Ann. I've seen that one.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
you've seen the ones.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, she was born to play that role.
Yeah, like Tina Fey, but in a different.
Yeah,
admittedly in a different
circumstance.
Genre.
Genre.
I mean, honestly, she should have won an Emmy for that.
Lisa Ann.
Yeah, I mean, an EGOT.
There you go.
The first porn star to have an EGOT.
An EGOT.
They should have
because the AVN.
The adult.
Yeah.
EGOT. See, that's the world I want to live in.
Yeah.
The adult.
The adult industry is blended with the mainstream industry. That's amazing.
Now that I like.
Yeah. Now we're cooking with gas.
Yeah, and there'll probably be a lot less toxicity in the adult industry, just like there's no toxicity in the other entertainment industry.
It's true.
Side note.
I'm of course kidding. We can move on.
Well, sorry, but side note, the porn industry has their standards and boundaries. They're actually a very sexually healthy people as a whole, as a sort of subculture of people.
Well, after the whole John Holmes incident,
Well, not the old generation, as we've seen with Ron Jeremy.
Yeah.
But I mean, the newer generation of the porn industry are very it's on the up and up. It's on the up and up. I have friends in the industry.
And this is Jerry trying to tell you guys, subscribe to his OnlyFans. Jerry's OnlyFans. He dresses up like Jerry Only from the Misfits. And he just shows you his asshole. It's great.
Yeah. I just want to say, for Jerry's sake, none of that's true.
None of that's true. No.
If he says it, it just sounds like he's denying it, but I will stand up for Jerry, and it's me that actually has it. I'm just wearing a Jerry mask.
It's confusing, Zach. Chris, take it off.
It's very meta.
Now, what happens when civil unrest starts to rear its head is that militia groups on both sides, the more Germanic side, the more Polish side, start to form, right?
Yeah.
And, I mean, you see this all over the place,
You gotta defend your Second Amendment rights.
You start arming yourself. You start arming yourself and well, if we're gonna fight, we're gonna fight, So that starts happening. It just you
don't want to be the one who didn't arm yourself.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is your homeland, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and at this point, you're fighting for either your nationalistic pride, or maybe, in your mind, because you can't see into the future, your better future, right? It's one of those two things, right?
And they say men aren't dramatic.
It's true, man, especially in this time.
It's ridiculous that somebody would say that.
They're
have you ever met men?
Dude, have you ever met any man?
Have you ever seen a drunk man at a bar go from happy to angry to happy to crying?
Oh, dude,
I've
seen a guy that is so mad at the bar. He's mad that he thinks that the bar is cheating them, and then he refuses to leave.
Yeah,
and it's like, so wait, what?
I can think of. I remember there was one time where a guy refused to sign his tab. He was like, "No, I already signed it."
Then you gotta
I
go.
Already signed it. Yeah, it was a whole thing. It was super funny.
I'm not going, and it's like, what are you doing here then? You just want to yell at me?
Yeah.
Anyway, now there's a really loud voice in the Polish camp, right? And his name is Wojciech Korfanty.
I didn't catch that. Can you yell it?
Wojciech Korfanty.
That's a great name.
Okay. Yeah, it is a pretty dope name.
Is that a Polish name?
It is.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
The last bit could have been a little Italian, maybe.
Yeah.
It ends with
well, I kind of put a.
You also with your finger, you went like "Mamma Mia" gesture.
Yeah, I put a little marinara on that.
Yeah,
thing.
you did.
Yeah.
That's what you call that.
I can't help it. Yeah, a little bit.
I do that with Spanish words. Well, I'll be like,
yeah.
I can't think of any right now.
Yeah, you put some cayenne on that bad boy.
I put marinara on
the habanero.
Spanish words. Yeah. They sound Italian.
Well, he was a politician. He had actually served in the Reichstag during the war. He did a lot of things. He was sort of center-right. He actually he was the editor of a newspaper called the Upper Silesian. And he railed against being a part of Germany, right? Mm-hmm. And he didn't like that it was Protestant and that they were Catholic. You know, that whole old, tired argument.
Right.
And he also didn't like the Polish-German policies. Basically, the Germanification of a population, being like, our culture is superior to yours, so you should be like us.
That doesn't sound German.
Yeah, right?
If anything, that's Austrian.
Yeah.
At least one Austrian.
And another thing in Poland, you get all these people together, and they're like, let's do things like we used to do it when we were in Russia. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, we should do it this way when we were a part of Austria-Hungary.
It's like,
well, we should do it this way because we were part of Germany.
We should do it how we used to do it because things were better there. And they're like, and people think.
Well, they just have a lot of different ideas. Yeah. And it's like, well, so that's already your government. Mm-hmm. Your new government is on shaky ground. You know what I mean?
Again, it sounds like a fucking confused teenager after talking with the guidance counselor about what they want to do with their life. Mm-hmm. Because everyone is giving them unsolicited advice from their own experiences and are just bombarding the fuck out of them.
Well,
is this a personal experience thing?
No, it's not!
I would say, like, if you were 30... and then you went back to being a teenager in front of the same guidance counselor. Now, what do you want to do? And it's like, well, I've already done things. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, but what do you actually want to do?
Like, stop doing your little podcast thing and get a job.
I want to smother that guidance counselor with a fucking pillow. Anyway, I'm not mad.
We've been doing it for
mad?
3 years.
Who's mad? Not the polls, not in this episode.
They say most podcasts fail in the first 11 episodes. We've done a couple more than that. That's all I'm saying. Yeah. Mom. Actually, she's super supportive. She's super supportive of the podcast. She loves it. She doesn't like all the cursing.
Oh, yeah. Chris.
But it's funny.
Yeah.
Hey, if your mom doesn't want any cursing, she can help us out. Join our Patreon. Yeah. Once we get to that $1,000 a month mark, if you subscribe for $1,000 a month, we will...
I'll take you to Disneyland.
If my mom subscribes for $1,000 a month, I will quit swearing on the podcast.
Yes. Yeah. Chris will quit swearing on the podcast, and I will just double my duty.
Oh yeah, you guys gotta.
Yeah, I gotta do something. I'll take your mom to Disneyland. If somebody gives us $1,000 a month, I'll take them personally to Disneyland with me.
That's true.
We'll have a great time. Anyway, so all of this is boiling over, right? You have militia groups forming. They're becoming more polarized. You got Korfanty railing against Germans, and Germans being like, Anyway, it's really coming to a head. So on August 15th, 1919, coal miners started striking. The reason why they were striking is
because they were dying?
Well, that they were fine with.
Well, they didn't want to mine coal for Germany. Mm-hmm. They just didn't want to do that.
Oh, it
makes sense.
Okay. And before the plebiscite took place, they were basically doing that. Mm-hmm. And they didn't want to do that. So they stopped, and things started to heat up. And some border guards, some German border guards, while this is happening, opened fire into the civilian crowd, killing 10 people.
Oh, boy.
It led to a general strike of, I think 150,000. And
now people just strike about workers' rights.
Yeah. And
fair pay.
Yeah. It turned into the first of 3 of these uprisings we're going to talk about. It was unorganized. It was quickly put down by the Vorlaufige Reichswehr.
Reichswehr.
Reichswehr. And that they put down this small unorganized uprising. It was way just like, hey, you can't treat us this way type of thing. And everyone kind of got involved. All these Poles got involved.
And they're like, yeah, we can.
Yeah. Well, there were a lot of people that were arrested. And these people that were arrested, there was about 2,500 of them. They were hung or shot by the Germans, right?
They all had marijuana on them.
Yeah, don't get caught with marijuana in Idaho.
Yeah, I know. I was just thinking about that.
Not that it happened to me, but that I happen to know what does happen to you. If that,
or you can go just
the
slightly
case.
across the state and just buy it at a weed store where, like...
Yeah. Don't live in a backwards-ass state. How about?
Yeah. Unless you have backwards-ass opinions, and then just fucking stay
And then,
there.
Stay there. Don't come over to a non-backwards-ass state. Stay right
sorry,
there.
gang.
Oh man,
Yeah.
I was just in Idaho about a week and a half ago.
You were?
My
I was
God,
actually-
I have stories.
I
was
enjoy
following-
Boise. I enjoy Boise.
I was following
fucking
the tour.
can't stand Boise.
They have a
For all of you Boise
freeway.
listeners,
There's
you
a
guys
lot
are
of 'em.
great.
There's a
but-
lot of them.
Can I just
Zach.
ask real quick? Have you been to other parts of Idaho, Zach?
Yeah,
You've been to Coeur d'Alene.
road tripping when I was a kid. Those are some stories.
I've been to Moscow.
I've only passed through Moscow.
I went to an Applebee's in Moscow.
Ooh.
So you basically passed through a Moscow.
So I've basically
Nice.
not been to Idaho.
Yeah.
I didn't try to buy weed there.
Yeah. Well, don't. But anyway. Now, because violence was flaring, the Allies, especially the French, were obligated to send a peacekeeping force, right?
Yeah.
Like, you gotta send soldiers over here. If you're insisting on this land going to Poland, you gotta send forces over here, right?
So you
they
gotta
did.
back up your claim.
Right.
Yeah. And it was a small force, but they did. They sent them over there, along with some troops from Great Britain and some troops from Italy. The problem with that is that Great Britain, of course, is siding more with Germany. And Italy is also siding more with Germany.
They seem like cool guys.
Yeah, so basically, like, they're supposed to be, like, disarming people on the border, things like this. The French are not disarming the Poles. In fact, it seems like they're covertly supporting the Poles by giving them guns and shit.
Just slide that across the table.
And definitely disarming the Germans on the other side. And, like, it's something that if you lived there at that time, you could see. But the outside world couldn't really.
Yeah.
Basically, what ended up happening is they couldn't stop the civil strife. And it's because the Allies were completely divided on this whole question, right?
Yeah.
So they couldn't stop it. In fact, the French at least definitely fueled it. You know what I mean?
In the broadest strokes, the French essentially want, like, the resources in that area, right?
They want the
Or they
resources.
don't want Germany to have them, more
Yes.
specifically.
They want the resources to go to literally anyone else except
You
for
can throw
Germany.
them in the fucking ocean
Yeah.
for all I care.
Again, they're going. They're going to Poland, right? And Poland is going to be
They're like-
their new ally, right?
Yeah, but
old
and
but
England
new
is
ally.
like, but we want the reparations, so how else are they gonna...
You're right.
They're not gonna have them if they're fucking poor.
Well, and a lot of the reparations goes to France, and he's like, well,
They're like,
You know.
we want the reparations and we want to fuck them.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. They're kind of shooting.
If you know
themselves
the
in
history,
foot a little
like
bit.
their experience in like World War One, and even before that, where it's like they wanted to be part of World War One majorly because during the unification of Germany, they lost a lot of borders. Like they lost a lot of land.
Yeah, land on the west.
Yeah,
and
on the west of Germany.
west of Germany. Yes,
Yeah.
east
And, like,
east of France.
So they kind of went to the war being like, we want that back.
Yeah.
Now,
Well, now it's a DMZ. It's a demilitarized
4
zone.
years later, charging through fucking Belgium and 4 years of war.
Well, and every time the Germans would, because basically they're like, we're going to send troops down to Silesia to guard what's ours, and the French are like, we didn't say, no one said that was yours yet. You can't do that. You're not abiding by the Treaty of Versailles. You were supposed to completely dismantle your military. And they're like, look, we have a hobbled military, and I'll get into that here in a second. But And Britain was like, yeah, they're just defending their own lands. We haven't done a
It's
plebiscite
just a series
yet.
of private militias.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And not far off.
Yeah.
But
it turns out like there could be gray area about what's a military.
yeah. And while they're quibbling about all this stuff, in the meantime, the civil strife is just heating up in Silesia, especially Upper Silesia. Germans were looting Polish shops. And here's another thing, guys. The Jewish population in Poland, do you think they're being treated well?
Oh, fantastic!
I'm gonna go
They're
with
fine.
I'm gonna go without the joke.
Yeah.
And say that obviously not.
No, they
Kind
were
of famously not anywhere.
No, well, and the thing is like, long time ago, when Poland was like the Commonwealth of, the common part of the Commonwealth, is that it actually was a decent place for Jews to live. That's why they have a larger Jewish population.
Yeah.
But after the First World War, a lot of Bolshevism, and especially in Germany, but Bolshevism and the fact that they lost was blamed on Jews. So like Bolshevism and Jews went hand in hand in a lot of this ideological, try to make sense of things, right? The Bolshevism equals Jews, that also bled over into Poland, right? So they were not treated well in Poland either, you know, in the interwar period.
Well, it's like, I mean, the whole thing, I think we mentioned this on the show, like, Hitler didn't invent anti-Semitism.
No.
It's existed forever, and
No.
my understanding, like, in the, again, broadest strokes of the sense, it's because all these Christians essentially had, like, rules against banking.
Yeah.
So who was doing the banking,
Right,
And it
exactly.
they were like, why do they have all the banks and the money?
Well,
And
because it
just-
was illegal for,
Yeah, and it's
it was
like...
illegal for certain people to touch money, to
Right.
deal
Well,
with
it just
money.
comes down to, like, how fucking stupid a reason anti-Semitism exists in the
Well,
first
it's because
place.
they didn't really understand history,
And when you
back
don't
then,
understand history,
you repeat it.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
that's why they're trying to
yeah.
keep you from learning it in Florida, and they
Yeah,
want that
yeah.
to be nationalized.
Yeah,
Vote.
in this country.
Vote this year, God damn it!
Yeah. In this country, they're dumbing down your history books. They are. They
Yeah.
are actively.
They're stealing knowledge from you and
Yeah.
your children,
Yeah.
and that's what they want.
Yeah.
And that's why
Florida's
you have
the first to
us.
do it. Texas,
Texas.
they want
won't
that
be
to be
last.
the full country.
Yeah.
and they will fight for that.
Yeah. Once they have these books like fully, I'm sure Idaho will buy them. I'm sure,
They're like, oh, this
sure
one
it's gonna
doesn't
be
even
all right.
mention the Holocaust or slavery. It's great.
Yeah. Anyway,
Write to your congressman so that the History Boys podcast is on every public school
Yeah.
curriculum.
I'll
Yeah,
teach
there
you
you go.
kids.
I'll teach your kids.
Trust us, they're in good hands.
Now, Germany. I want to at some point do a full deep dive on the Weimar Republic. It is fascinating. It is terrifying. It is haunting to learn about their country. At this time, with what is going on in our own country.
Oh, absolutely.
It is spooky how
it's like-
similar it all is.
I mean, at least they taught that's like that period of time, like Germany between World War I and II. They taught when I was in school. Like,
We never really learned any of that.
it's interesting. I lived in a
Yeah.
blue state, and it's pretty interesting how different what I learned.
Yeah, we never really
With
learned
like
anything
absolute, I remember like seeing pictures from the Holocaust in high school.
about. Oh well, the Holocaust.
You may have seen that.
The Holocaust, yes. World War II, yes. World War I, even a little bit. But the interwar period, the Weimar Republic, absolutely.
Oh,
not.
interesting. I
absolutely
definitely remember
not.
hearing about that.
That was me again. Yeah, that's just how it was for us. But so basically, at this time, I do want to do a deep dive on Weimar. But what's important to know in this episode is that it is a pretty progressive government. The Weimar Republic, it was, and they were basically just trying to juggle all of these problems at the same time, and it didn't work. And it was one thing after another, and it just destroyed everything, all their high hopes and
As
everything.
self-admitted progressive and leftist.
Yeah.
That sounds like a very progressive thing to happen.
Yeah,
Right.
well, it is one thing after another.
It's like if you're trying to help everyone,
Yeah.
or trying to it causes difficulties.
Well, and things that they couldn't have foreseen, like a pandemic. But
Which there was at this time.
There was indeed. But basically, they're soldiers that were coming back from the war, and a lot of them demobilized themselves. They straight up just like put their rifle on their back and got back to Germany themselves.
They get back then, they go, fuck that shit.
Yeah, fuck that. Yeah. I'm coming back. So, like, they would come back and, like, their country's very different. Mm-hmm. They feel that their own country sold them down the river. There's this myth that's going around that wouldn't be dispelled for decades later, that while they were in the trenches, and if you heard this, and you thought it was true, I could see how you'd be mad, but it wasn't true. But what they thought is that they thought that Bolsheviks and Jewish people, while they were sitting cold in the trenches, basically sunk a knife in their back. Mm-hmm. And was like, all that loss and everything.
What was it? What was it all for?
Yeah, we stopped the war for our own gains,
mm-hmm.
right? And the people you saw die next to you, it was for nothing.
Yeah, I totally imagine that. 4 years in a fucking trench, coming back, finding
everything
your
is
government
changed.
completely different government in place,
Completely
trying to
different.
patch every fucking problem, and you were just left to not give a shit.
And you're also in the military,
and you're like,
and the military is hardcore in
mm-hmm.
Germany.
Yeah,
so you were ingrained into the military culture, and the thing is when you're in the military culture, you don't answer to a civilian government. You answer to a military
mm-hmm.
government. You know what I mean? That's what you're used to hearing stuff for. So when civilians tell you to do shit, you're almost intrinsically like, no. What do you know? Fuck you.
Where were you when I was in the fucking trench?
Exactly.
I get that.
So when they got back and they pointed the fingers at Bolsheviks and Jews, they were like, okay, so these are my enemies.
These are the people who sold me down the river. They're wrong.
If you think the Nazis were the only people telling them that, you're wrong also.
Well, that's the other thing.
It was a bunch of different people saying it.
And I know that we aren't, we aren't talking about the beginnings of World War II, but we are kind of.
I mean, yeah, sort of.
But it's like, if you come back, everything is unfamiliar, everything sucks, you just went through all this shit, your country is paying out reparations to your enemies, that's coming from your hard work.
Yep.
Everything is being taken from you. What did you fucking fight for this whole fucking time? And then you get these people coming down being like, it's the Jews, it's the Bolsheviks,
It's these
they're
leftists.
wrong, and of course they go in a bad direction, but you gotta understand why they think this.
Right.
You gotta understand the access to
it was how they were.
Truth isn't necessarily.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter. The truth doesn't matter. But you are like, I am suffering. I fucking fought this war. What was it all for? That rhymes.
Well, it wasn't for anything.
Yeah.
But that's not the way they saw it, right? And when you see drastic changes and things like this, and you don't have your strong leader like you had before, your militaristic strong leader like you had before. You have instead what you consider people who did not go to war, did not do all this, who protested against the war. It's basically like Vietnam, if the Vietnam protests actually ended the war.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then when you got back as a Vietnam soldier, your country was also different because it was rewritten by the same people that protested the war. Mm-hmm. So when you come back, if you could imagine that, I mean, circumstances are different, but if you can imagine that, it's akin to those things. And so they stayed together in these militant groups called the Freikorps. The Corps, right? The Freikorps. And the Freikorps, they were totally disjointed. There were over 100 of them. They were all over the place. And the Nazis stem out of this. But basically, it was
a Freikorps franchise.
Well, it's a far right movement of military veterans from the war, and they all called themselves the Free Corps, right? Like the Free Military, right? And
the far right Freikorps franchise.
There you go.
Brought to you by Jimmy John's.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Anytime the Weimar government had to deal with something militarily, which was often, they had to rely on the Freikorps
because they didn't have a military.
It was totally so their guns, they didn't have many guns, they didn't have a lot of ammunition. all this stuff. They've been totally disarmed. So,
so what I'm hearing is Germany during this time is a bunch of hippies running shit, being like, veterans, can you please solve this problem for me?
Yeah, they're rising up. Communists are rising up in the east. They're rising up in the south. Can you please deal with these guys? And they're like, fuck you, but yes, I will.
Like,
and then they go
only
down.
because I believe in killing communists.
Yeah, and they go down and they deal with it horribly. They spray paint swastikas on Jewish homes. They do all that kind of stuff.
Is the swastika imagery already happening at this point?
Oh, yeah. Yep. That is attached, as far as I can tell, to anti-Semitism and white supremacy in, I believe, 1906 or 7.
Interesting. So
in Romania. Yes, in Romania, I believe is where it comes from. Yes,
but
where that comes from.
People talk about that
because okay, real quick on the swastika. Real quick, it's basically another basic. This is a huge subject here, but basically, at its bare bones, it is another form of the cross.
Yeah.
Right? Within this Eurocentric understanding. Because it exists in North America, it exists in Southeast Asia, it exists in Asia, it exists nearly everywhere.
Yeah.
Okay? The swastika-like imagery exists everywhere. And it all pretty much means about similar things, right? But it was used as sort of a different way as depicting the cross, but depicting the cross in an It's Always Sunny when they go, okay, who are we doing this against?
Yeah.
It's like, you don't have to be doing it against anybody, right? But they're like, this cross basically symbolizes the basically Christianity, and we're doing it against someone else.
Yeah.
Right? It's like a militant Christianity, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I suppose. I am not
doing a great job at really doing all the full. This is a huge thing here.
I understand the concept of why these people are doing it. There's a lot to be done about why that symbol was chosen specifically.
Yes.
Right.
Like as you're saying, it must originated. That use of it originated in an anti-Semitic way in Romania, of all places. Where it's like, I feel like I've always learned like practically Hitler invented it because they always want to talk like Hitler invented anti-Semitism, you know, but like...
Yeah. It's not true.
He adopted it.
He's
like, they were born in the darkness. He merely adopted it.
Exactly.
Right. I mean, like, my thoughts, my original opinions on it and everything was that it's because of, like, Hitler's sort of obsession about, like, different, like, I guess, mysticism and culture, and would go into, like, the Far East Asia and everything like that.
Yeah.
Where,
I've definitely heard that.
Like, in
I'm sure that
a lot of Asian countries, it was a form of peace more than anything else, but then he... I guess it would be the equivalent of, like, doing inverting the cross, so inverting the...
Well, the thing is even in those cultures, they had an inverted swastika, right? That meant different things. And Hitler actually turned it on its side.
Right.
You noticed it's kind of on its side.
Right, yeah.
But, it does matter sort of what it means based off of which direction it's facing, da-da-da-da-da. Each culture, it means something a little different. But in Europe, it meant something else as well. Right? And
now in the world,
it became to mean something else. Right?
Well, that's the thing about a symbol, is it's like, when people go, sometimes you hear that whole thing about people want to bring it back, and it's like, that's done.
It's done. It's done.
It's just a fucking symbol, first of all.
Yeah.
Symbols...
It's a shape you draw.
Symbol, like, people at home, recognize the difference between a symbol and what the symbol is supposed to represent, because often people start making too much attachment to the symbol itself.
There are three things, right? There's the symbol, there's the signified, what the symbol means, and then there's the signifier, what that actually is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, totally.
So the symbol, right, is like the swastika. What it means is it's anti-Semitism in this context. And then what it actually is the Holocaust, right?
Yeah,
like everything that Nazism stands for, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, always keep in mind, all symbols have those three things.
So it's rules of three.
The symbol, the signifier, and the signified.
Okay.
Right?
So, Fred Perry, Black and Yellow, Proud Boys.
I mean, pretty much.
Okay, cool. All right.
I mean, sort of.
But
that was quite the... sort of tangent, but it's like, we're telling a story that heavily has to do with World War One and Two.
Yeah.
Like, it's almost impossible to not be like, and then here's another thing.
Yeah. Well, bringing it back to Silesia.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's go back there.
Yeah. August 19th, 1920, there was a second uprising. This one was more organized.
Mm-hmm.
But
an electric boogaloo, if you will.
yeah, well, it was slowly brought to an end by September. Basically, it was a combined effort of allied military operations and negotiations. But basically what they decided at that point, they were like, okay, no one can stop this from happening. It's getting even worse. Mm-hmm. They're getting more organized. It's getting worse. What can we do to fix it? So they were like, okay, well, the police force here has to be at least Polish. Or at least 50% Polish, is what they were saying. Because at that time, almost all of the police force was German, right? And then when they were like 50% Polish, you know, it sort of brings it back down. Now, in some places, that was already true. Mm-hmm. It was already 50% Polish,
or
right?
maybe more.
Right, yeah, 60%. No, it's true. But it's these really problem places where they, you know, needed Polish police, so you didn't have just a giant German police force beating up people that were like, fuck you, Polish, you know, like that kind of a thing, you know. Another thing that's sort of indicative of our country, you know, like, you have an overarching ideology within the police force that another aspect of the public does not share. Mm-hmm. Or completely outright disagrees with.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know how to stop that either, because this didn't stop anything else either. So it was a Band-Aid.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like...
Yeah.
Yeah.
They also wanted the POW, the Polish Military Organization.
That is not what I'm used to that standing for.
I know. Well, in Polish...
I understand.
It's Polska Organizacja Wolowskowa.
Yeah, they wanted the prisoners of war.
POW, the Polish Military Organization, to basically set their guns down and stop this, right? Mm-hmm. And, you know, they're headed up by, like, Korfanty is, like, sort of like their guy. They don't do that. They don't set their guns down. You know what I mean? So, leading up to the plebiscite that's coming up in 1921, in April, leading up to the plebiscite, Korfanty starts circulating more propaganda, being like, they're just going to agree with the British and Italian side and just cut the line where they said it was, which pissed people off.
Right.
The Poles and the Silesians really pissed them off. So they start, like, building up now, you know, before the plebiscite even is decided. Now, when the plebiscite is actually... when they actually go through it, there's no violence on, like, that time. It's like everybody held their breath. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And what happened is that 60% of the population voted to stay with Germany. Mm. And you know what? They couldn't point fingers at each other because 98% of the population participated in that vote.
Wow.
So that right there, that is a divided society. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So it pissed people off. I mean, they're extremely divided, and now they're like, well, we can't just let all of it. Now they're not even going to cut it. They're just going to leave it with Germany. All of it.
All of it, no.
They're not even going to chop it. Like what some people thought maybe was a possibility that we could do.
Right.
So on May 2nd, 1921, Korfanty leads the third and the bloodiest Silesian Uprising.
It always comes in threes.
Yeah. Well, this time, they'd be ready, this time they would be organized, and this time, by God, they would win. They outnumbered the German forces, and in some pockets, had them outgunned. Because, again, they're fighting like German partisans, not necessarily the Freikorps at this point, right?
Right.
Okay.
So, because they had, you know, militias, same thing with them. Except that these Polish militias were now being backed by the Polish army, and, covertly, the French army.
Yeah.
Right? So they had a little bit more going for them. They weren't nearly as well trained as, like, the hardened Freikorps.
So the French are over there poking holes in it.
Yeah.
Much like the Swiss in their cheese.
Poking holes in my cheese?
Yeah. That's where it comes from. They're just crossing the border, poking holes in their cheese. That's what's always been.
Yeah, it's the way to cheat me out of my money.
Yeah.
So they get more money.
Yeah.
Damn Swiss. Anyway. Now, the German forces were indeed ill-equipped. They didn't have very many machine guns. They were being disarmed. They didn't have a lot of ammunition. Their supply lines were insanely stretched, right? Mm-hmm. Even at this point, on the border. However, they were veterans of the Great War.
Yeah.
And they knew how to fight. I mean, they just came from it. They knew exactly what the fuck they were doing.
I was doing this the whole time.
Yeah. These Poles over here, Silesian Poles, didn't really. Mm-hmm. They're civilians that took up arms, right? This is an uprising.
On the German side, these are the guys who survived the war.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The guys that still want to fight.
Not to discredit those who didn't. To be very clear.
Well, and a lot of their officer corps too
I just
retired.
meant they'd seen it all.
Yeah. A lot of their officer corps retired, so you get these bitter younger officers in the Freikorps that are way more radical.
Well, they probably grew into it too, right?
Well, especially like when you come home, and we just talked about this, and then you're made an officer. Now you get to call the shots. So now the whole military is amped up. It is way more extreme than it used to be.
Oh, it's like Woodstock '99,
right?
Lots of testosterone right there.
Oh yeah. Fervor. Your fervor is
Kid
high.
Rock's running shit now.
Yeah. Now, through the month of May that year, the Polish forces drove back German partisans, drove them all the way back to the Oder River, which is where they wanted the line to be drawn, at least, right? And they knew that they were going to see some Freikorps here in a second, you know what I mean? But for now, they were winning. They were pushing them back. And it infuriated Weimar, and it especially the Freikorps. It really pissed them off because they're taking these German lands. They don't like that one bit. So Weimar basically says, hey, all these disjointed Freikorps, don't go down and fight them. You're going to start another world war if you do that. Don't do that. I know, we're pissed, but we're going to do this at the diplomacy table. Please don't go down and start shooting people.
Yeah.
They rolled for charisma and initiative, and it was a critical failure.
Or at least that was the outward appearance. I think it was more like no, don't. I think it was more of that.
Oh, okay. So so they rolled critical failures on charisma, but for deceit, it was a crit.
They were like, no, don't. Wink, wink.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the thing was they were shooting themselves in the foot. Because now they've come to resent you for, putting out your little fires for you. And also, it strengthens the Freikorps position, the far-right extremist position, and it weakens any position, any footing you ever had as a legitimate and stable government.
Well, it doesn't help that you shot yourself in the foot. That's why you lost that footing.
Yeah.
But by all sides, by the far left as well. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, they need these guys that don't even like them. You know, we don't like them, but, it weakens the whole Weimar position, right? So, they... Hold on. Hold on, I lost my place here. So, a guy named Karl Hofer. He was... I'm sure I'm butchering the German pronunciation of that, but he was sort of made commander, and there's a couple more. There was Bernard von Holsten, and they united a couple outfits, I guess, of the Freikorps together to go down and deal with this situation, right? And there was a lot of future Nazi leaders that actually took part in this operation, and as this is happening, as they're kind of getting everything together, and they're like, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're getting the band back together, right, guys? There's German propaganda that's like, these Poles are out there, and they're looting German stores, and it's banditry run amok. It's lawless, And the same thing from the other side, right? Like, we're finally taking it back from the German banditry, you know? So, it's a no-win, sum here.
Yeah.
Well, a very strategic point that the Poles did take near the Oder River was a place called Annaberg. There's a hill there, and they could kind of oversee everything, below them, right? So it's this really good position. And the Germans, once they decided that they were going to take this hill, this Annaberg hill, they were like, "Ah, shit, this is going to be difficult without artillery. They don't have any artillery, none." So, like, trying to take the hill for them, they were like, "Man, this is way more difficult than it used to be."
Right.
Remember when we had guns and shit?
Yeah, big
Ammo?
ones. Yeah. And yeah, they don't have a lot of ammo. Their supply lines are stretched. So they do take the hill, because what they're doing is they're using the Great War tactics to exploit little holes in their line and basically bypass points of, points of resistance, right?
Yeah.
And they...
Like a pinhole in a condom.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I guess so, yeah.
Yeah.
And,
Life finds a way.
It finds a way. And...
Hi, Tyler.
In the course of 7 hours, the Germans take the hill. And it's called the Battle of Annaberg. They take the hill, and the Poles are in retreat, right? And they get so on themselves for doing this. Even their own commander is like, "This is the first German victory since 1918." So they get really on them. They by the way, they flag they fly the Imperial German flag, not the Weimar flag.
Yeah.
They fly that flag.
The Confederate flag.
Yeah, so that shows you where their heads are at. Like,
Yeah.
we're doing this for what we actually think Germany should be.
Right.
And they get up there and they're like, if only they would just let us do this, we could fix all of Germany's problems. Like, that's where their heads are at. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We could have won the war. We could have done it. Like, it was these guys back pushing papers that lost the war for us. No fault of ours. So you can really tell when they fly that flag at the end of this battle exactly where, like, all the Freikorps stood.
Oh, absolutely.
During this time.
Right.
But all of that was completely misplaced. They completely underestimated the Polish, because once they regrouped, they counterattacked. And with the fervor, right? And they could never really dislodge the Germans from this position. But it was a bloody stalemate.
Yeah.
And, like, keep in mind, like, a lot of this stuff was because of the lack of ammunition, the lack of training, the lack of all these things. It was guerrilla warfare on both sides, you know what I mean? In a lot of places. And it wasn't just here, too. I can't stress that enough.
Yeah.
It was not just here. It was pretty much everywhere. But once the stalemate kind of ground to that stalemate, France basically was infuriated that they would do this, that Germany would intercede in this matter. And they wanted the Freikorps to be disarmed. Weimar denied all culpability, which of course is a half-truth.
Yeah.
And Korfanty, he was. Everyone was like, Korfanty's over there being a warlord. He's out there handing out executions just on the fly, and it's like, was he? Yeah, probably. Yes. Probably.
Right.
But also, wasn't he trying to protect the land that was given to him, to his people?
Well, okay, so it depends on which way you see it.
Yeah.
So it's like, are you going by the plebiscite, or are you going by the original 14 points of the Treaty of Versailles? Like, which way you're going with it?
Yeah, it's all gray area.
Well, and the British were like, well, the Treaty of Versailles says that there should be a plebiscite, and they said Germany. So Germany has every right to defend their land.
That's a solid argument.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
And France is like, no, this is bullshit. You know?
This is bullshit.
This is bullshit.
It still blows my mind that a fashion company came up with this treaty. Oh, I'm thinking of Versace.
The Treaty of Versailles.
Sorry.
Totally different thing.
That, and by the way, there's like, I don't know, 100 Treaty of Versailles. There's a shit ton of Treaty of Versailles.
Half of them are written by the guys from Versace.
Yeah. Just throw a couple more in there.
Yeah. And they were also afraid that Korfanty, knowing that he maybe was losing, that he would just blow up the mines and blow up these industrial centers and be like, fuck you, take it then, Germany. Fuck you, rebuild your fucking mines.
That's what I would do.
Right? Yeah, they were afraid that was going to happen. And the British were like, okay, everyone calm down. And they sent in some peacekeeping troops with a Canadian general to help decide. Didn't work.
He didn't know what it was all about.
Yeah.
It didn't work. But the official end of the third and bloodiest Silesian Uprising was July 21st, 1921. Around 3,000 people died on both sides. But the number is hard to count.
Yeah. As most of those numbers are.
Yeah. There wasn't a ton of media, like outside media. Like the thing about like Ethiopia even during the Italian invasion is they had media from all over the world there.
Right.
Not so in Silesia. Again, the Americans didn't really take any notice. They didn't care. Nothing was getting out of Central and Eastern Europe.
It's the roaring 20s for them.
Yeah, right. Nothing was getting out of there.
They're hella Great Gatsby right now.
Yeah.
So Silesian would have been in a better state if Haile Selassie was there to
No,
put some.
that's not what I'm saying.
Okay, never mind.
I'm just saying they had news.
Yeah.
They had American writers, they had British writers, they had French writers, they had Spanish writers. Basically just journalists. They're documenting what was going on from the West.
Right.
Anything they had like that down there was partisan, you know, and or favored one of the allies.
So, yeah.
Right.
Completely unreliable.
Completely unreliable.
You had your
you know.
CNN and you had your Fox.
Right.
And that was it.
Yeah, exactly. That's it.
Well, CNN is got rebought. And
right. Well,
now you got your Fox and your Fox.
Yeah. Well, yeah, CNN would have been France, basically, in the basic way of understanding this, I guess. Depending on what side of the border you're on, I guess. I don't know. Because, I mean, if you were German, you know, France was your Fox. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
You know, so, I don't know. You know, it's...
So you had your Breitbart and you had your Alex Jones.
Right.
Okay.
There you go. There you go. That honestly is a more accurate way of putting it, because it's propaganda on both sides. It
Right.
really is.
And those chemtrails. Don't
Yeah.
get us started.
Yeah. So they calmed down the shooting part, right? And the Allied Plebiscite Commission, you know, the people just overseeing the plebiscite, they were like, okay, so we can't figure this out. So they handed it to the newly formed Beacon of Light, of all things fair and peaceful and equitable, the League of Nations.
Yeah. I knew that. I knew where that was going.
Yeah. I was trying to be as sarcastic as possible.
You know, that came off. I got that.
Good.
I honestly thought you were going to say Adolf Hitler.
I mean, Adolf Hitler. I knew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even the League went, okay.
You're like, this one's a doozy.
Yeah, we're going to give this to a couple of our smaller members.
Yeah.
To
We're
figure
going to
out.
delegate this one.
Yeah. We're going to delegate this to a couple of our representatives of some of our smaller members. So they gave it to Belgium,
Yeah.
Spain, China, and Brazil to decide.
Oh, that makes perfect sense.
Oh, I thought you were going to
Representatives-
say Oscar Armentrout. That's the smallest of members.
Yeah.
The smallest district.
Well, and Belgium is a little biased. I will
Yeah,
say.
you mean the country
you
that
think?
literally fucking marched through us to fight France?
Yeah. They're a little biased.
They're like,
Yeah.
I think they would be.
But after representatives of each country start this investigation, they reach a decision, okay? And they basically, you know, they pull out their big map, you know, of just Silesia, and
They're going to see the big board.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry.
they draw a line. They draw a line, right?
Doctor Strangelove.
Yeah.
One of my favorite movies. Still
And-
holds up.
This decision pleased no one.
Yeah.
No one was happy with their decision. Because here's what happened. Most of the population would go to Germany. Which sucks for Poland.
Right.
But out of the 61 coal mines in this area, 50 went to Poland.
That's what I thought it was going to be. The populated area. I thought you were going to say
It's the only way to do it. It's
go
the
to
only way
Germany.
to do it.
The coal mines go to Poland.
Yeah, the
essentially.
cities, the German cities, right, go to
Right.
Germany, right?
Yeah.
And then the coal mines in the rural areas go to Poland, right?
Yes.
And there's exceptions to that rule, of course. But generally speaking, that's what it is, right? The Poles were unhappy because they still have Polish nationals on that side of the border that are being repressed now fiercely.
Yeah.
And there are Germans on the other side of the border that are now being being fiercely repressed. So both sides hate this. Germany's like, I can't pay my war reparations now. I don't have these mines, you know? So no one's happy with this decision at all, right?
Do you think if the war reparations were a little more reasonable, Germany could have been a little more...
I read a book for this about the Weimar Republic.
Yeah.
About the war reparations.
I know that's probably like, do you have 20 hours to get a small answer?
The author of the source that I read, he maintains, and he is a real historian. I'm not a real historian. I just read real historians.
Yes, you're just a history
listen
boy.
to you.
Yeah. He maintains that with careful economic practices that Weimar could have, it was possible that they could have paid their war reparations. Now, that's only surface level, though. That's taking out the, all of the uprisings, your Bolshevik uprising that happened.
Went
your shit that happened in
smoothly.
Westphalia, your shit that happened in the Polish corridor, and your shit that happens in fucking Silesia. And then you also have hyperinflation because you keep printing more money to fund all of these things, right? And keep these things open. And then you have the stock market crash, which just destroys everything. Destroy everything that you had planned, everything that was going well in Weimar, which there were a lot of things going well in Weimar that they do deserve credit for. All of a sudden, that's out the window. So it was just one thing after another that fucked them in the ass over and over again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right. And instead of a more progressive centrist government, which they were, you get a far right one.
You get the almost historically exact opposite. Like, one of the best examples.
You get the poster boy of far right, politics. You know what I mean? Anyway, now, go ahead. We're almost done.
Cool. I was gonna give you
Good.
your hour 20.
I'm getting better. I'm getting better at
Should I
this.
pee now? I gotta pee. Is now a good
Yes,
time?
pee now. Okay.
Rolling.
So, Korfanty was also accused of course, by the Germans, of organizing terrorism against the German civilians in Upper Silesia. And, again, one man's terrorism is another man's freedom fighter.
Absolutely.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, yes, but also no. German propaganda newspapers also smeared him and... hold on.
Sorry, I'm not right on the side of the mic. Jerry, can you do me a favor? Can you look back there? Just right back there. Just look at that.
Oh my God. Okay, let me say this again.
Sorry.
The German propaganda newspapers also smeared him by saying that he ordered the, executions and murders of, these politicians, and, he was basically conducting vigilante justice during this time.
He's Batman.
Well, more like Scarecrow in Batman Dark Knight Returns.
Okay.
Because I was that? Where like he's like the head of like that like kangaroo court. That that's like Korfanty.
That's
right?
my favorite part in the whole movie, and I do not care for that movie.
I know.
I think that's a concept that I think if they went more with that.
Yeah.
So anyway, Batman. It's not just a city in Turkey.
So by 1923, Poland had its borders that were tenuous, with strong enemies on all sides, and the hatred between the two wasn't gone. It was just stewing, right?
Right.
And it wouldn't go away until way after the Second World War.
Yeah.
And even to this day, Poland doesn't side with Germany on anything.
You gotta really blame them. And if you read the sequel to this story,
Yeah. Korfanty, he actually had to flee Poland due to internal political divisions. He briefly served during the Vitos administration. And then well, of course, he stood for the Catholic Polish nationalism, and all of these things that he had been. Although he kind of went away from like the center, like he was always sort of center right, meaning center right Polish nationalist.
Right.
But he kind of went away from that and kind of went a little bit more towards the Polish government's more centralist standing.
Left.
Right? He moved to Czechoslovakia. He was forced to leave Poland, and he went to Czechoslovakia during the German occupation and actually helped fight the German occupation there. He went to France and stayed there for a little while, and he came back to Poland when it was clear that Germany and Russia weren't going to cooperate.
Like, my people need me.
Yeah, and it was clear that they were just going to... Basically, they were going to meet in the middle of Poland and fight it out. That's how it was basically...
It's like what I was saying at the beginning. It's like, the stomping ground.
Yeah.
Right.
And
such luxurious marching.
Yes.
I don't have to go up Alps.
Yeah. So he went back to Poland to help fight for Poland, but he was arrested immediately and sent to prison. And it was because of his... Well, and a lot of people think this. It's unclear of how he died.
It's because of his outstanding alimony payments.
Well, it's because of what he did with the Silesian Uprising.
I did forget about that.
Yeah, he was arrested immediately, and people say that like he died from the harsh treatment and prison conditions that he had while in prison. But his death again is sort of still, cause of death is kind of up in the air still. Silesia itself, however, at the end of this whole thing, one thing they did get that still stands to this day is they are an autonomous zone within Poland with their own, they have their own language, their own culture even, but their own parliament and voting body.
Yeah.
So at least they have
just
that.
Like CHOP in Capitol Hill.
There you go. They still have... they're still a part of Poland, and there's still a movement to make Silesia its own country. Things have cooled down a lot since then, though. There's still sort of divisions because, Poles are like, well, you people over there in Silesia, you're a little bit more German than we'd like you to be. And they're like, well, stop considering everything German to be bad, right?
Right.
So there's all the...
No.
It's still sort of going on, right? But this is basically the fallout of everything else. The rise of Nazism, the rise of Hitler, is on the heels of not just the Silesian Uprisings, but everything else that was also going on. It was one piece that was the same as many other pieces.
Well, yeah, it's interesting because it's like the time period between World War I and II, this is kind of a microcosm of what was kind of happening everywhere.
Yeah.
To one degree or another. However, to certain levels of intensity, but like...
Well, and Germans feeling that they are losing some sort of strong leadership, losing land because they don't have strong leadership, a lack of nationalism, things like this that they felt were missing in the Weimar Republic, why they felt the need for something more extreme, something more right, something more, honestly, returning to the old...
Make Germany great again.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Well, Hitler did say that, make Germany great again.
I know.
He did literally say that. So, it's reading about this time and place in history is spooky, because...
Oh, there's absolutely similarity. I'm not
similar.
I'm not gonna compare Donald Trump to Hitler because Hitler was smart. But I will say that
Well, I'm not saying Trump is a Nazi. I'm saying Nazis think Trump is a Nazi.
I'm not gonna say Trump is a Nazi, but I will say that Nazis like what he has to say.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And with that, that is basically our story.
Yeah.
Again, there's so much more, and I do want to do deep dives on all the other stuff as well. But man, I learned a lot researching this episode.
This is fascinating.
I learned a lot.
I also like that it's that you picked a story during the time period where I can actually have some level of understanding. It's because the world wars are fucking fascinating.
Yeah.
I was gonna say cool, but
well, and
that's a little
the Eastern Front too. What we think of in the West as an Eastern Front.
I don't know how much I've. Yeah, absolutely.
Poland does not like to be considered Eastern European. They like to be considered Central European.
The same. Like I've been to Hungary. We're like, I don't know if it's America or even like Western Europe or two as well, but like we almost view anything east of Germany to be
Eastern. Yeah,
like Germany's almost like Western.
Well, I think we consider it, it's
kind of central to like,
Germany on the Western Front, and then on the other side of Germany was the Eastern Front.
That's what I mean.
Right. And I think that's why we think of that in that way.
It may be.
Anything east of Germany is the East, right? But these Eastern Fronts aren't really written about very often in the West. Mm-hmm. They're not written about very often. So it's stuff that I didn't really know. It's stuff that I really had to hunt down, and I really had to do a deep dive on all of Polish history to really fully understand.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Eastern Front is very both, during the Double War, which is really kind of like it's like a war and then a slow,
it's like
and then another war,
world war, and then fighting doesn't stop in this area, but the world has stopped fighting.
It's a very interesting, and it's like I remember talking to my dad about this, and it's like we're talking about like how there are politicians who are probably going to run for president, like DeSantis, who are actively trying to keep your children ignorant. Right. I'm not going to mince words on that. I find that to be one of the scariest things about that group of people is trying to, we have literally a history podcast where we're trying to get these messages out to people and make them interesting and fun and entertaining. And you have a group of politicians who are actively trying to keep children from learning the important things that they need to learn.
Well, we're just trying to make history more approachable, and the fact that they're making history unreachable is a crime. I think it's a cultural crime that will absolutely have.
Oh, it's absolutely
detrimental effects on our
whether it's
the ideological standing of our
ideologically and like morally, it is a criminal act as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
because it's like the horrific. Sorry, one last thing. The horrific things that happen in history are massively important to learn, and that seems obvious. But you have people who are winning political races who are saying the exact fucking opposite for saying that.
Yeah, that's spooky.
The whole reason why is because they want to keep the status quo in check, because slavery is illegal. So the only way to keep people ignorant is by criminalizing knowledge.
Absolutely. That's why they didn't want fucking peasants to learn to read.
Exactly. Right. And on that note, my name is Zach Mack, and I am the prodigal history boy who has returned for a couple weeks, and then I go out again.
He'll be here and there,
here and there.
Tyler too. He'll be here and there.
Yeah.
I'm like your dad who went out to go get a pack of smokes, and then he found out that your mom won the lotto.
That's great.
I'll be back.
Yeah, we're doing a lot better than that Gary Newman character.
Yeah.
That's not true. Gary's great, from what I hear.
Yeah.
He's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that guy.
That's fucking crazy.
And I love the whole crew. I miss you guys.
I've seen quite a few pictures of you in the same picture as Gary Newman. It's fucking wild.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Very cool. All right, I am Christopher Whedon. I am a history boy, and I don't want to do any of the
outro stuff.
The outro. What do you call
I'll do
housekeeping? You do it all. Tyler was getting really good at it.
He was getting so good at it. But I'll do it. I am Jerry Nash, your humble history boy. As always, thank you so much for listening. We love all of our listeners. We love our shadow listeners, our lurker listeners, and we love especially, and I have to, I definitely love especially our Patreon listeners that keep our show on the internet. They buy resource materials, they do all of that. And if you want to do that, then you can go to patreon.com and you can find History Boys there, and you can give us as little as $1 a month. And what that $1 a month will do is it will get you on our Discord, where you can hang out with us, post memes, we can talk, we can chat about episodes, about anything, about your personal life. We do all sorts of stuff.
You can show me pictures of your dog.
Yeah. And our kitty cats and all that type of stuff.
Our cats or dogs, depending on which history boy.
Yes. And it's a lot of fun. $5 a month, you get a shout out, and you get to be on Discord. You also, for $5 a month, you also get the Patreon show the first month it comes out, right?
Yeah.
And then, after that, it goes into like a vault, right? Mm-hmm. And the people that have access to the vault of information, plus everything I just said, they're at the $10 level. Yeah. They get everything we ever produce.
$10 or more gets you anything that you want, including Chris's butthole pictures.
Hey now.
That's a joke. I don't want somebody like taking us to court and is like, hey.
They said it. It's false advertising.
They didn't see my finger quotes.
Your Honor, I was doing finger quotes.
Yeah.
And then it's like, wow. Okay.
That's legally binding.
Yeah.
Allegedly.
Now, you can also follow us on all the social medias, your Instagrams, your Facebooks, your Twitters. Interact with us there as well. Send us an email at historyboispodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing from each and every one of you. You can send in, like Kobe did, you can send in episode recommendations or something you want to hear, something you don't know about. Send that in, and it might take some time for me, but I will absolutely get on that.
And if you happen to have a podcast and you want to do an ad swap, also hit us up on our Gmail.
I love doing that.
We do that every once in a while. We like to give our podcasting friends, we like to share the love. Mr. Zach, will you finally do us the honor?
Love you, bye.
It was really all the same thing.